Hey, what is up, everybody? This is BQ with the Pro Wrestling Voice YouTube channel. So before you do anything, before I even start speaking, go ahead and subscribe to this channel. Give it a thumbs up. Each week I do a quick roundup of Impact Wrestling. 6 points, good and bad, about the show. You can act as a review for some of you who watch the show. And if you didn't watch the show, you can take 10 minutes out of your time, listen to what I have to say, and maybe you will decide that TNA Impact Wrestling is for you. So first thing that really, the first point I wanted to bring up was this was the start of the Bound for Glory playoffs. And basically it was a tournament, but TNA does like to use different terminology, which I appreciate very, very much. There's a lot of instances where they just try to, even if the wording is a little bit different, deliver it something, something original compared to the other wrestling programs. So Bound for Glory playoff was basically a tournament, 8 really good top wrestlers to just determine who's going to be for Bound for Glory. Now the brackets were, I mean, I couldn't fantasy book them any better. The brackets were great. The winners, losers, all kind of predictable so far. So that was the part that maybe was a little negative about it, but it's always fun to be able to to watch a tournament. There's often times where they say, hey, the #1 contender is the winner between this match, or they just name the #1 contender. It's cool to see this kind of format where the winner has to earn the #1 contendership, and that will be for Bound for Glory in September this year. So it's not going to be in October as usual. So they're doing it September. Good stuff. Second one, the Hardy saga continues. You can say what you want about Matt and Jeff Hardy and the work that they're doing. You can like it, you can hate it. There are people that love it, and there's some who loathe it. And that's cool, that's fine. That's pro wrestling. But they're doing a really good job keeping this storyline going week to week without doing repetitive things. So even when they were wrestling kind of often earlier in the year, it was different matches. There was a I Quit match. There was there was one normal one-on-one match, but there was the I Quit match. There was the Full Metal Mayhem. There was the Final Deletion. So it was all different style matches. And each week, even though they are continuing the storyline, it is just always something different. It is not something repetitive. It is not watching, two guys just go at it. It progresses each week, leaves you wondering what's going to happen next week. So this is really the feud of the year in wrestling and pro wrestling. I don't, you can hate it, like I said, but it is just the feud of the year, the way that it is being booked. So big props to how they're handling the Hardy feud. Matt Hardy is really finding his character now. At the very beginning, it was different accents and it was a complete mess. He is finding his way now, adding a lot of humor into it. So really, really, really good stuff. We got a third point. We got a heel turn tonight by Madison Rayne. And the reason I wrote this down as a point is because we don't, back in the 80s and 90s, that was one thing. But in today's wrestling landscape, we don't get a lot of heel turns that are just out of nowhere. It's always I love slow burns in wrestling, but I don't like slow burns when it comes to a heel turn. And it's like week to week, they're just doing heelish things till you eventually know what's going to happen. This is one that, she's actually, it was kind of random because she hasn't been on TV in a couple of months, but it was one that as you're sitting there watching, you didn't expect, came out of nowhere. She's one of the biggest fan favorites for the Knockouts in the company. And for her to do something like this, I'm curious to see what happens next in the storyline, but it was just out of the blue, and it's always great to be surprised in wrestling. Fourth one, Moose. He really brought a breath of fresh air to the episode tonight. On my podcast, I always complain about Mike Bennett talking every week. I keep saying he's the new Seth Rollins, like keep talking. Mike Bennett does not wrestle a lot on Impact. It's most of his segments are talking. So when he is in the ring, it is special. But tonight, again, segment complaining about Dixie like he's been doing the last few weeks. And then Moose opens his mouth for the first time in Impact. This is only the second show he's been on. Opens his mouth, and the minute he did that, just the energy he brought to the segment, just his, adding a different voice to the segment, it was just a breath of fresh air. Moose did great. when he did speak. It was very short to the point. So good stuff, good stuff. Moose, he's going to be killing it. One thing, I drop a negative every single time so people know I'm not a fanboy. Take this episode. Which was really cool. Don't mind that at all. But this kind of felt like one of those episodes where I complain about this with WWE all the time. It's that they don't want to ever give anyone a break. It's just like every episode they just have to throw as many people at you as possible. That's kind of what this one felt like. They kind of did it with the matches, but the matches, it wasn't that big of a deal. But we just got this really, really random backstage segment with, not Grado, but Mahabali Shera and the Tribunal. It was like absolute filler stuff. It's something that really we don't care about because that feud's supposed to be over. So, and it's definitely not a feud that we want to see continue. So that was really, really random. The backstage segment with Bram and Rosemary, again, you know, don't like where that's going. Didn't enjoy any of their work together so far. And there was a couple other segments that it just was like, okay, let's just get people on TV. And that's TNA hasn't been doing that all year. They haven't been afraid to say, okay, this guy's not going to be on TV this week. Galloway's probably the only one that and Bennett that they seem to make sure you hear from every. They're two of the ones I like listening to the least, I should say. So that was one thing. Crammed a little bit too much into this episode, but you know, there's always going to be a negative with every show. And then point number 6, Eddie Edwards. This dude is in the ring tonight with Lashley. He opened he opened the match with this top rope dive through the cage door, which was freaking phenomenal. It was picture perfect. He did some great moves during the match, and he did some phenomenal selling, which with guys his, you know, right now in today's wrestling landscape, we're not seeing a lot of selling, especially from the younger, newer generation. Eddie Edwards sold he really came behind, and as an underdog, he really sold the underdog story. And this dude, he's just a freaking star. He looks like it. He wrestles like it. He just gets it. And I don't know how they're going to keep the Wolves together when he comes back, because the two of them are just so phenomenal. And the tag division is so weak right now. You know, it was different when they had Beer Money and Bram and Eric Young to go against, and there was a lot of competition. Now the tag division is really, really weak, and when the Wolves come back, it's going to be like them and everybody else, as good as the Decay is. So I think they're going to do some kind of split up here. I like to see them do what they do in ROH, where the Briscoes are, you know, they have singles careers, but they still can come together. Even back in the 80s, the WWF did that a little bit with Jim Neidhart and the Hitman. They did split up from time to time. They still kept their same tag team attire on, but they split up. They weren't afraid to split up and then come back and wrestle as a team when need be. So I hope they do that with the Wolves, but Eddie Edwards killing it right now. And he could be one of the top baby faces here before long. So that's it for 6 points of impact. 6 things that really stood out about the show. If you think you want to check out my entire podcast, the King of the Mountain podcast, just check the description in this video, click the link, and I think you guys will really enjoy what we do. But again, subscribe here at Pro Wrestling Boys. Give it a thumbs up. Catch you next time.